This is the curse of a YouTuber. People steal your names in MMOs. Yeah. Well, you're probably here to have one question answered, and it's quite simple. Is New World Aeternum actually worth playing? Well, I've spent the last weekend playing this game because I do like the odd MMO. I'm going to be honest with you guys. To just quickly give you my credentials, I was a world first raider, raid leader, and also an officer of one of the best guilds in EverQuest 2. Now, that dates me. I'm not going to tell you what the guild was or what my characters' names were, but you can probably work it out by I played a Guardian and a Berserker. So, yeah, go and work that out. But MMOs, I've done them to death. I've dipped in World of Warcraft in and out. I've never been super hardcore into WoW, but it's always kind of been that like little theme park MMO to play. Although I've not played it for a few years now anyway. Although I am tempted by the new expansion. So if anyone still loves me at Blizz, go on, throw me a key. I'll take it. Anyway, let's get stuck into this, because what the hell is this game, New World Aeternum, and what the hell are Amazon trying to do with this thing? Well, essentially, this is them trying to Realm Reborn New World. Now, these are the player figures for New World. You can see it's trash. I mean, this is literally a dead MMO. Hardly anybody is playing this. The investment Amazon put into it, it's just gone, right? So they needed to do something to reinvigorate this. And New World Aeternum is their attempt at this. Essentially, what they're doing is turning it into an action RPG MMO. And I think they've nailed some aspects of this, which are super engaging and really well done. But there's, well, a massive problem with the game. It's very bland. Anyway, let's break all of this down. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Yeah, so it is kind of confusing what this game is. So it completely, totally replaces New World. Like, this is New World. And what they say is it's a major update coming to New World, and it will be out on October the 15th. But the New World Steam page will update to be titled New World Aeternum. The New World Aeternum update includes a fully revamped storytelling approach with enhanced dialogue, in-game cinematics, and pre-rendered scenes, the first ever large-scale PvP zone, a challenging 10-player raid, and new endgame solo trials, right? Now, the issue with this game is New World itself had, like, really terrible endgame. It was literally non-existent. But it would seem this update is only really targeting the sort of start of the game. I mean, it is radically different. Like, I remember my time with New World, and then looking at it, it's like totally radically different. It's miles better. I'll be totally honest, guys. It's a lot better, the new player introduction and the way the game starts. But this is how they explain how you get the game. So again, this is kind of confusing, right? So I have the New World base game and the Rise of Angry Earth expansion. If you currently have the New World base game and the Rise of Angry Earth expansion, you will have access to all content in New World Aeternum update for free. But what happens if I only have New World base game and not the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion? If you currently only have the New World base game, you will have access to only some of the updates and content that launch with New World Aeternum. To get access to all of the stuff, you need to buy the Angry Earth expansion. I don't have New World yet on PC. If you do not purchase the game before October the 15th and you want to be ready on day one for New World Aeternum update, you will need to buy the New World base game and the Rise of Angry Earth expansion. Both of these are bundled in the Elysian edition. And then on October the 15th, if you don't even have New World and you haven't bought it, well, then there'll be a New World that you can buy called Aeternum Standard or the Deluxe Edition. So it is stupidly convoluted, but basically this is not a free-to-play game. It is, you've got to buy the game to play. So yeah, we can have the discussions forever and a day about whether this is what they should be doing in 2024 when it comes to a new game, especially in MMO, because the market is already quite saturated. Probably should be free to play just to get the player base in, but that comes with all of the stupid monetization issues. Anyway, let's move on. That's the state of the game, but let me just well, that's, I guess, the explanation of where we are with the game right now. But let's break the game down. So let's talk about the absolute categorically best thing about this game. It is the combat. The way they've nailed the combat feels like an evolution from all of those tab targeting MMOs of the past. Now, I know there's been MMOs which have done this kind of like, you know, action RPG style in the past, but I do feel this works super, super well. It's very fluid. The animations are really nice. And it's just, honestly, it's really good, actually. And this is what will draw you into the game. And for me, specifically, this is what kept me engaged. It wasn't the world. It's definitely not the quests. And it's definitely not, well, I don't really know how to explain this, but it's not the environment design. It's just the, I guess, the art direction of the environment. It's very bland. It's very generic. This is a fantasy MMO, and yeah, you can go and play a bunch of other games that look basically identical to this game. So I think that's its major downfall. But anyway, I do want to talk about the combat and what we're actually watching here. So this is like one of the little quest hub areas. I'm running around this little keep. We need to kill a bunch of named mobs and get the loot off them. And you can see me going through my different weapons. So the way the game works is you get mastery points. This is very similar to the way New World works. Or worked, I guess. You get mastery points for the type of weapon you're using. Now, certain classes are better with certain weapons and all of that stuff. So you can see me using a greatsword here, and I've got a blunderbuss as my secondary. Now, as you kill enemies with the weapons, you get mastery points, which you can spend on the weapons, which either potentially increase the damage of the weapon, or it might increase or give you an ability, or change the way an ability works. And weapons have different types of trees as well, and I'll show you that in a second. But essentially what you're doing in the combat is flipping between your two active weapons and using their abilities in concert, while also parrying the enemy attacks, the light attacks, and dodging away from heavy enemy attacks. So it is very engaging, especially for a melee character. Now, I will hold my hands up and say I've not played a ranged character over the weekend. I basically invested it all into this character. But it was very dynamic and it felt really cool. Like, you can imagine the tanking feeling really good in this game because you're dodging around, you're actively having to parry. It isn't just, I've pressed a hotkey, now I'm parrying for 3 seconds. It's no, you need to actively parry attacks as they come in, and it's like a massive like increase to your effectiveness as a player. Obviously, you can just run in and just start slashing wildly, and that is effective, I guess, against like weaker mobs. But obviously you're going to have difficulties if you're trying to take on a harder mob and you're not deflecting its attacks or dodging its most dangerous attacks, which is pretty much your standard MMO fare. So yeah, I really enjoy this aspect of the game. They've absolutely nailed. The nagging thing in the back of my mind is, if only they had applied this in a completely different world, with a completely different art style, with a completely different like aesthetic, then it might have appealed a bit more. Anyway, let's talk about the weapon mastery stuff. I want to show you that. So let's talk about the attributes, right? These are the stats that your character's got. Now, you can see here, I've pumped in a load into strength because I'm a melee damage dealing character, right? I've got a big, massive greatsword. I do more damage when I'm swinging my sword if I've got more strength. That's great. You can see I've neglected dexterity, but I could have gone into that. I've got intelligence. I don't need that. Focus, which again, I don't need that. And constitution, this is going to give me more HP, right? It's going to make me more tanky. But you'll notice, though, there's actually these nodes across each of these bars for the stats. Now, when you get to a node, you get like a major unlock. So for the first node in Constitution, you can see all health consumables are 10% stronger, and I get plus 10% logging speed, and logging is obviously chopping down trees to get materials. And then you can see I've actually unlocked the second node, which is plus 10 physical armor when at or above 50% health, and a 1.5% chance of finding rare items while gathering. But then if we look at strength specifically, because this is where well, I've got the most points in Constitution, but this is what's augmenting my weapons. So obviously adding points to this has an effect. Now, it affects all of these weapon types up here. Now, currently, I've got the blunderbuss and I've got the greatsword equipped. And you can see damage scales with strength 80% and also dexterity. It's the damage scales with strength 90% on the blunderbuss and intelligence 65%. You can see with dexterity, if I was piling stats into that, it's only going to scale with the greatsword and not actually scale with the blunderbuss, which I'm using. So you can kind of see how you can change your stats around to like benefit whatever weapon types you're using. And of course you can respec. This is free at this point, but I don't know whether it's going to be free constantly when the game is out. So this is pretty cool, to be honest. Like, it adds a different dynamic to the game. But remember, your weapons are basically where your skills come from, and we should talk about that now. So this is the weapon mastery screen, and you can see I have pretty much exclusively just been using greatsword and blunderbuss in this beta. Or beta. Now, the reason for that is you get ability points or mastery points, which then unlocks abilities, and the abilities greatly increase the effectiveness of your hero, because this is where your abilities come from. Then you don't just level up and you get a class ability, you get weapon-based abilities. That's the way this works. So if we take a look at the greatsword, and again, this is very similar to what New World did. But for this, I've got Onslaught, which is the damage-dealing tree for the weapon, right? Now, I could have gone into Defiance, but Defiance, as you can see there, is basically the defensive tree. I didn't want that. I'm literally running around on my own. I just wanted to do tons of damage. But this class is a tank and a DPS hero. Or class, I should say. So I've got this ability here, which is Crosscut. Slash 3 times in quick sequence. Does quite a lot of damage, but it's an ability. Obviously, I've unlocked the ability first. And what I did as I was going through this tree is I'm basically prioritizing unlocking these abilities. So I've got the full sort of remit of abilities for the weapon, because then you basically you just do more damage, right? You're doing more abilities, you're doing more damage. And then you end up with things like aggressive shift. So I enter onslaught stance by hitting an enemy with a heavy charged attack. An onslaught stance is there, you do more damage, right? So you want to be into that stance. So if I start with a heavy attack, I'm going to do more damage because I'm going into that stance and all of that stuff. Also using abilities triggers it as well. Then you do like have an ultimate ability at the end of the tree. And you can see here for this one, Onslaught, it's Unrelenting Onslaught. Hitting foes reduces Greatsword cooldowns. Light attack 2%, charged heavy attack 10%. The other weapon I'm going to show you guys is the other one I've been working on. So it's the Blunderbuss. Now, there is an interesting sort of like shared XP mechanic with the weapon. So if you are doing damage to an enemy and you kill the enemy and you only use one weapon, that weapon will get the mastery points or the mastery XP to unlock the points after you've gained the XP. However, if you use two weapons on an enemy, it's split equally. It doesn't matter how much damage one weapon has done in that fight. So if you smash their brains in with the sword and do 90% damage, then just kill them with the blunderbuss, it's still split evenly. And you can sort of see I have they're unsynced. I've got level 8 in the greatsword, level 6 in the blunderbuss, because I haven't been doing that every fight. You know, obviously I'm using the greatsword more than the blunderbuss. That's the takeaway from that. But again, it's the same situation, right? So you're basically going through and essentially unlocking the abilities, although I think I went for reach on this ability because I wanted the chaos abilities. So I've basically augmented this Azoth Shrapnel Blast, so it's got better range through this ability, and then I went over to chaos and I can fire a splitting grenade, and I can change the way the weapon fires to a mortar charge instead of just the blunderbuss sort of shotgun, I guess, shot, which is what it had before. But that's basically the way this works. And you can see, like, if I bring this back up, there's a load of different weapons. You can use them all, and you can just pick what you like, and then you can just go from there. And yeah, that's the weapon leveling system, and it's essentially the character leveling system as well. So let's talk about quests. This is one of the hyped things the devs were going on about, where they've basically revamped the quests to be more engaging. So they're all pretty much fully voiced. You've got all of these different NPCs. But I'm going to be honest, guys, it's boring as shit. Like, I am like bored out of my brain. I've seen generic fantasy after generic fantasy after generic fantasy. I have little interest in any of these characters. I actually couldn't even name these characters. I can now because I can read what it says at the bottom. Oh, that's Persilla. All right. But I literally have no interest in them at all. And I actually found myself spamming through the dialogue. Now, I don't generally do that. I normally listen to the quest dialogue, even in games like WoW. But I'd listen to the quest dialogue. I want to become absorbed and involved in the world. But with this, I just honestly had no point. So I do think when it comes to, you know, them shouting from the rooftops, we've revamped the quest system. We've made it more engaging. I've got to be honest, I did not feel engaged at all. Now, maybe that's just a me thing. But I really didn't. It didn't grab me in any sort of way. I actually didn't care. It was almost like I just wanted to go, look at me, I'm just spamming through it. I don't care what she's saying to me. And I honestly, guys, I generally do not do that. But in this game, I absolutely did. Even though it is a very generic setting, I do think actually the environment itself, so like the way they've populated the environment with things like plants, obviously the plants and the trees, you can harvest them all, and you can harvest rocks or I guess mine rocks and all of that stuff. But the world itself is quite big. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can see. There's very good sort of draw distance. And yeah, I know it's generic fantasy and all that, but it does feel like a fairly well put together world. I mean, I'm not going to go out there and say it's the best thing I've ever experienced, but it's not also absolute garbage. On the other hand, it's fine. It does feel kind of modern in that way. And I think this is the issue the game is struggling with when I look at all of its systems that are combined together to make this MMO. The combat feels really good. The world is generic, but the way it's been put together does feel quite modern. But beyond that, the game is just full of every other system that you would expect to see in MMOs. But anyway, we'll get onto that in a second. It's pretty cool. Like, you cannot not say that what we're looking at here is crap. That actually looks quite cool. Decent job there. You know, I do think this is a nice element to the world. And of course, I've only explored around this zone and the zone adjacent. I've not been to the high level zones, which you would expect to look more impressive. But I do think it actually is quite well done in this regard. So another aspect that I really, really like is the movement in this game. So the combat's great, but the way the movement complements it is also really good. So you can climb. You can literally jump in this game, which I know is like a massive thing in MMOs. We can jump. Holy God, we can jump. But also, you can traverse around the map, and there's puzzles. I guess we can call them jumping puzzles if we want to rip off Guild Wars 2, but I guess New World did that as well, and whatever. But anyway, you can see me messing around here. I'm looting some fresh water, because why not? Water effects look nice, but they always do in modern games. And yeah, you can see now that I'm actually starting to jump around this environment. I'm trying to grab onto the edge of the ledge. I'm running around, and I'm going to go into an area now where it's kind of like a little movement challenge. It's not difficult, because this is obviously one of the earlier challenges of this type in the game. But you can go prone, you can like crawl under these beams, you can jump over them, you can obviously jump up to higher ground by grabbing onto the ledges. It's quite nice. And you've got to remember, this is an MMO, and it feels so like kind of, I mean, I got hit by it then, but it feels like unusual, but also it feels kind of nice. You know, it feels like we're playing an action RPG game that just happens to be other players around. And when we're taking part in combat, the combat also feels like an action RPG game and not like your typical MMO. Everyone's tab targeting and just kind of like, you're not that engaged in the combat itself. It's more about, I guess, hotkey management. Whereas this is like, you feel like you're a bit more engaged in the combat. It's by far the strongest element to the game. So the combat and the movement, good job. I think they've done a really good job on that, but it's just everywhere else where the game is like, it's just, I don't know, it's just a bit meh, which I guess is the issue. So let's talk about loot, gear, and items. Now, you can see I've got one blue item at the moment, which I probably should have equipped, although it's a bow, and I'm not really too happy about a bow. I want to be in there with a melee weapon, smashing people's brains out. But this is better. This is better than what I remember from New World. So the way this works is just nicer, right? You know, like as you're moving around the world, you can bring this up and you can take a quick look. You can still move about. You know, it's fine. It's like whatever, that's fine. But the items themselves, they're a bit boring. But again, this is low-level stuff. You're not going to get some insane weapons with, hello there, with like crazy amounts of proc effects on them and all that. You're just not going to get that. You generally get items from quest rewards more than you do out in the world, but you do get obviously drops from named mobs or bosses that you kill. And then you can go from there and loot them if it's your type of weapon. But like, yeah, you can see like I've got a bunch of different weapon types here. So I could actually go around using a void gauntlet if I wanted to, or I could get a massive warhammer, or I could use, that's also a warhammer. I thought that was a massive axe, but I guess it's a massive warhammer. That's a massive axe. There you go. A massive axe. And so, yeah, I could quite easily equip these weapons, go out and fight mobs just to level up the weapon, and then get, you know, mastery points in the weapon and unlock abilities. And yeah, like, I guess, like, the design of the stuff, it looks fine, right? But again, it's early level stuff. Actually, to be fair, that doesn't look too bad. I think I'm being a bit harsh there on that. This looks okay. But obviously, it's not as good as this Knight's... What is this? Heavy... Well, that Knight's armor I've got there is better than this armor in quite a lot of ways. Obviously, I'm taking a lot of melee hits, so I want to be, you know, protected from that. But I think it's fine, right? Inventory-wise... I've not actually hit the cap, but I think this is because I've got loads of strength, and I'm pretty sure that affects it, or possibly it is constitution, but I think I'm just one of the classes that can carry more stuff effectively. You've got stuff like your utilities or your consumables, which is like your health potions, your mana potions, all of that stuff. You've got food, which just gives you health back out of combat effectively, but you do need to make the food. Obviously, that's through the trade skill system, which... You know, I'm going to be totally honest. I'm not the biggest. Where is it? I'm not the biggest. Well, you can see I've literally done nothing, but I'm not the biggest into like trade skills in MMOs. I just generally like to be like the explorer style character. It's never been a thing I've been interested in. Things like, you know, playing the auction house, gathering stuff. You know, I've just never really done it. So I don't really feel confident speaking about it in this game. But it is an element and aspect of the game. But I do think the thing with this game is the combat, and that's what's going to keep you, or I guess is what they're hoping will make you play the game. So is New World Aeternum actually worth playing? Well, this is the problem. Like, I'm not going to go out there and say, yeah, this is great, you're an MMO fan, go and pick up the game and play it. If you played New World, you're probably going to want to check this out, but I know New World is, again, one of those games where it does have a very small player base, and those players will be pissed that the game has changed like this, but that game could not exist in this world, this modern world, with that player base. It was just going to get terminated, essentially. So at least Amazon are trying to do something with this, and they have changed it in a way which I think makes it more, you know, usable and more playable to most players, which I think is what they're going for. I do think the combat system is a major success, especially at the lower levels. Again, like I said, I cannot comment on the higher level of the game or end game or any of that. I'm not there. It's a beta. I can't play that, whatever. I wouldn't have the time to do that anyway, but it's not even playable. So it's just impossible. When you look at the early experience of the game, I think it was quite fun. I had a good time playing the game. I didn't think this was terrible. Like, what the hell am I playing? I think they've nailed mechanics that matter. But I just think the whole package itself is a bit like, I don't know where this is going to go. Like, if you want to check it out, I'd go and check it out. Obviously, you can't play the game for free now, and you do have to buy the game, which is going to make it more difficult because then that's a higher barrier to entry. Whereas I just don't think in this year, in this day and age, this is what we need. And when I'm looking back at my notes and I'm thinking, what is the conclusion? What is the takeaway for this game? I think the takeaway, in some ways, is very similar to what happened to Concord recently. This is a game that would have been fine if it came out 5, 6, 7 years ago. Not a game that comes out in 2024 because there's just too much other stuff out there. And when you start adding in that, oh, you need to actually buy this game, then, you know, you've got to sink time into the game. And then, you know, blah, 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 is you're going to have the same player base as other games. You've also got the sunken cost fallacy with all the other MMOs that you play. So it's very difficult to prize players away from their MMO or their couple of MMOs they might play, or their MMOs and their live service games, and get them to play another MMO when they're asking you to buy the game to actually get through the door. So, yeah, but like I said, that comes with a whole host of other issues. If you go free to play, you know, they're tempted to go for these like predatory monetization practices. A lot of game studios are, and that's detrimental to the whole, you know, to the effect of the game. So yeah, I think it is difficult to sit back and go, I wholly recommend this game. I do think if you can, yeah, give the combat a go. It's pretty good. But beyond that, I'm struggling to see where the, you know, the long-term lifespan of this game is. But I do honestly believe this is a lot better than what New World was. It feels better. It does feel more modern, although, like I said, its aesthetic, it's even if its graphics engine, let's be honest, isn't like the best thing ever. It looks like something straight out of 2000. And, you know, I guess this may be being harsh on Warhammer Online, but it feels like Warhammer Online. Obviously, I know it isn't the Warhammer IP, but like just the way it looks feels like a 2010-ish MMO, right? It doesn't feel like it's cutting edge, and I think that's a problem. All right, guys, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, then let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. I've been Stylosa, and yeah, do subscribe to the channel if you want more content, and yeah, I'll catch you lovely lot on the next video. See you soon.